welcome to MCIM's webinar on the customer portal. It's going to be a good one. I'm one of your hosts, Mark Leone.
And I'm Stuart Chambers. As Mark said, the topic for this quarter is the customer portal. And to unpack that a little bit, by portal, we mean a web-based front end where customers can log in, where they can see what's going on around their account. They can request help or a schedule. Certainly can't forget about self-service. You mentioned one of those studies where now about 90% of customers expect some sort of self-service in their portal. So it's going to be a really good show.
We have a great show planned for today. Quick plan of events. We welcome Michael, our chief architect, to show the customer portal, followed by Hannah to show the technician view from within MCIM, and then Jenny to show the power of the customer attribution model.
Yeah, it is. We have a lot planned. I don't want to hold up the show anymore, but let me hit a couple of quick admin points before we get started. You are welcome to ask questions throughout the webinar. Please use the chat. You can use our email address as well, which is results@mcim24x7.com. And real quick, before I turn it over to Michael, to just set the context, it's all about the customer side. Michael's going to start really quickly in the back end just to set the context and the details for what you're about to see, which is the application of that portal technology to a co-location environment. So with that, yeah, let's dive in. Michael, we'll turn it over to you.
We're going to go through a demo today of the Colo customer portal in MCIM. And we're going to begin in the portal, the regular user interface where a normal MCIM user would participate. And we're going to begin on an asset. And I want to start here for just a moment to explain some of the key enabling features of the Colo customer portal. And they really all begin with your assets and what we call the virtual topology. And so in this view right here, what I'm looking at is a UPS system. This is UPS 1A. And among other things, all of the great features that you've come to love and appreciate in MCIM, we also have now what we call the virtual topology. And when I click on this tab here, it gives me a localized view of this particular asset, UPS 1A, and what is both immediately upstream, the main switchgear, and what is immediately downstream to PDUs of this particular UPS. Now, this is an interactive application. We're going to have another of our team members show you more about how to operate this later on in the demo. But for now, anything that I click on is dynamic, and it will start to show me dynamic downstream and upstream elements of whatever I click on. So you notice we're going down to the PDU. We're now seeing RPPs. We can continue to click down through this. Now we're getting into rack 1A and rack 1B, the upper half and the lower half of a rack. And we can even take this a step further, and this is the unique part, into who are the actual customers that are subscribed to or leasing these particular half racks. So in this case, we have our Colo customer 1 and our Colo customer 2 that are dependent upon rack 1A and rack 1B respectively. Now, what I'm going to go over with you in the rest of this demo is the dynamic nature with which MCIM assesses these dependencies and not only shows you things that are immediately relevant to Colo customer 1 if you were logged in as someone on that team, or Colo customer 2 or someone on their team, but also the indirect elements of information that are relevant to you as one of the team members of those two customers. And so from this point, what we're going to do is we're going to jump over into the login page of the Colo customer portal. Now, an important point to mention here is that the Colo customer portal is designed for co-location companies, anyone that has end customers leasing space from them, whether it's a rack, a cage, a server, what have you. And so there are many configurable options here. A couple of few points to specify at the beginning here. Number one is all of the CSS, all of the color palette, the logo, all of that is completely brandable. We have our fictitious company here, Fulcrum Co-Location, for the purposes of demo. And if you are already a registered user, let's say that I'm Chris Customer and I work for Customer 1, our fictitious company, I might have a login that looks just like this, and I could log in. Now, if I'm a new user of Colo Customer 1, I can self-service register down below here. Now, there would be an administrative process that takes place either by the MCIM team or by your team as the Colo that would allow you to vet whoever self-service registers, assign them to the appropriate customer account, and therefore, when they log in from that point forward, they would see only what is relevant to them and nothing that is not relevant to them. And so I'm already saved here as Chris Customer. That's going to be our fictitious user for the purpose of this demo. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And so what you're seeing here is the view of a customer. This is, Chris Customer. He works for Colo Customer 1. And I'm seeing a branded portal branded to Fulcrum co-location. Now, if you are a particular colo, again, your branding, your color palette, your CSS, your font, all of that would be incorporated in here. This can also be made a inseparable part of your website. So you can have this match your website to the end user. It would appear no different as simply another tab on your website. Very important from a branding perspective. But our default homepage here, and again, this is configurable, but our default homepage contains a number of elements here that I'm going to go through one by one. Number one is the homepage. When I land on the homepage, what I'm going to see are a few things. Number one is all of the requests that are in progress and their various statuses. Now we're going to go over the process of creating a new request here in just a moment. But this right here is going over the status of these different requests. This is configurable. Over here on the right, what I see are areas that are relevant to me. Remember, I'm Chris Customer. I'm logged in as Colo Customer 1. And so what I see is what is relevant to me as a customer and nothing more. In this case, it looks like data rooms 110, 120, 220, and 210, otherwise known as data hall 1, 2, 3, and 4. All of those are relevant to me as Colo Customer 1. So therefore, I see all 4 of them. Now, I also see other attributes about those data halls. For example, the temperature of the data halls or an average temperature, right? I see that right there. I also am able to see things like humidity of the data halls, right? And then importantly, I can also see not only the data halls, but the particular pieces of infrastructure that are relevant to me and relevant capacity data about those pieces of equipment. So in this case, it looks like PDU 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and 4A, 4B are all relevant to my leased installation. And so I'm actually seeing here a depiction of my spare capacity or unutilized capacity to date. Now over here on the left, you'll also see we have access requests. So if I want to request access for a vendor or someone on my team, I can do all that in a self-service manner right here. And that all interoperates with the Colo in a very seamless way. Now, obviously, the most important piece of this is the immense amount of manual labor savings that occurs by using what we call the virtual topology to automatically determine what shows up for Colo Customer 1 and their users, Colo Customer 2 and their users, Colo Customer 3 and their users, and so on and so forth. Instead of having to determine what maintenance do I show to this customer? What incidents are relevant to this customer? What equipment is relevant to this customer? And what attributes or performance characteristics of that equipment is relevant to each customer? I no longer have to do any of that manually. All that occurs automatically by virtue of the virtual topology. An immense amount of time savings and a very seamless and expedient experience for your end users in a very branded way that can be made a complete part of your website. So that's a quick flyby of the homepage. Again, I will mention that the homepage is configurable. This is our default configuration. If you have bespoke requests or bespoke requirements or desires for how you want your customers to experience the Your Company Colo portal, that is all very doable. Okay, so let's now go to the calendars and events. If I were to click on the calendars and events tab, I'm going to see a calendar here. Now I can change this to different form factors. Let's say I want to look at it by month, right? And it looks like, okay, at the end of April going into May, I have some important events. Again, these are only the events that are important to me as Colo Customer 1 because I'm logged in as Chris Customer and I work for Colo Customer 1, right? And I'm going to click next. I'm now looking at May. And what we can see is, okay, it looks like there's a freeze period for a firmware upgrade that ends at midnight on May the 1st, right? To the right of that, I can see that there is an incident that occurred on May the 1st. It lasted from 3:16 p.m. to 3:24 p.m. and it was a PDU 1A transfer, right? It transferred from primary to alternate. So I can see incident information. Now it looks like I've got a personal event that I set up here, which is a reminder to set up a cross connect for C3. Right, so I can see that there as well. And then we can see there are a few major maintenances, a quarterly Gen PM and load bank occurring on May the 13th at 5 p.m. And then a major annual switchgear maintenance that's going to happen on the 26th after hours and last through the weekend. And then we have our end of month freeze. Again, this is all configured and operable by your users. One of the great things to point out here is that you as a company would have your users operating the calendar internally, and whatever is relevant to the relevant colo customers would automatically show up in their calendar as we're looking at right here. So if I work internally for the colo, I may see a much busier calendar than what I see right here. But because I'm logged in as colo customer 1, specifically Chris customer or fictitious user, I only see what is relevant to me, and that all occurs dynamically. Again, tremendous labor savings, very efficient, very targeted. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to go over here are the new requests. If I want to interact with the colo themselves and make a particular request, I can click new request. And a couple of points to make right here. Number one is this is configurable. So you notice that I have 4 radio buttons here, right here. This is our default. It starts with a service catalog request, which we'll get into in a second. This would actually end up embodying your catalog with pricing for whatever services you offer for your colo customers. Maybe it's hands and eye, maybe it's a cross connect, maybe it's a PDU thermography. It could be anything. Your catalog and the pricing that's associated with it would be baked into MCIM during implementation and then configured to be automatic in this view right here, which we'll go over in just a moment. Now, it might also include access requests. It might include problem tickets and then just general inquiries. So we'll go over the majority of these here in just a second, but I'm going to begin with a service catalog request. And again, remember, this is going to be bespoke to your catalog. If you have a catalog right now in PDF, Word form, Excel, that will be baked into MCIM and baked into the workflow during the implementation period so that this becomes self-service for your end customers. Now, an important point here to make is this actually gives you the opportunity as a colo to make your portal a revenue generation opportunity, not just a cost savings or an efficiency play, but a revenue generation opportunity. So we'll talk more about that later, but let's say we want to do a service catalog request. We click next. Now, an important point here is, again, remember, because we know which areas and which assets are pertinent and relevant to specific customers by virtue of the virtual topology, that means that when a colo customer is asking for something in the catalog, we're able to have them specify the particular area or asset that they're requesting for. And so let's say that this is a request for data hall 2, right? And let's say that the request is a cross connect. Now notice before I click this, the number of fields that are on this form. And after I click it, notice the form dynamically adapts. So there is dynamic form adaptation here that is able to accustom to your requirements and make it so that when I request certain things, specific fields come up as required, right? So notice the cross connect type and the carrier both became required when I picked cross connect. So we'll say this is a medium priority. Let's say that the start date requested is today, and I would like this to be done no later than tomorrow, 23rd, okay? And let's say for the request that I want to establish a Cat6 cross connect between server 1A and server 1B. Now I can come in here and select Cat6, and let's say it's an AT&T carrier type. Now I'm just going to use a couple of fake values here. And then if I were to click next, it would go ahead and create that request. I would see that tracked in the Kanban view that I saw earlier. That would be communicated with the internal teams, and that back and forth communication, by the way, with in-app notifications. You see this bell right here. I, as the customer, would get notifications whenever anything changes, the status changes, completion's been fulfilled, so on and so forth. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to click new request again, and let's try the access request. Right now, here again, let's say that I want a multi-day request. When I click multi-day, it dynamically invokes a last day of request field, right? Now, so I'm able to create this here, and I can actually specify the user that I want to be granted access, and it remembers my prior submission. So let's say Catherine customer, one of my colleagues, I want her to have access. Where do they need access? Well, again, it's going to allow me to select the specific areas that I have access to, right? So let's say it's data hall 2. And I want her to have access today, and I want her to have access through the end of tomorrow. Now I can make that comment down here. And if I were to click next, it would submit that through the system. That would show up on the internal side of the workflow. And again, it would show up on my Kanban. So all very dynamic, very integrated. Now let's go back here and we'll click new request. And if we just look at problem ticket and general inquiry for a second, these forms, again, just like the other two and others that you might have, are configurable. Again, I can pick the location. I can say unknown if I don't know what the location is, or if there's none that's relevant. So all very dynamic. Now, before I leave this, I do also want to point out the FAQ and documentation. If I were to click this link right here, it's going to take me to a page right here where you can provide your FAQs. You can provide typical template forms that your customers may want to have access to. So an NDA, a contract agreement. This is content managed with version control. So I can get to all of that easily right here. I can download a copy of it. All very convenient. Now, what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to show this to you on a mobile device. So you'll notice that this adapts to the form factor. If I wanted to, I could do this on an iPad. I can do this on an Android mobile device. Okay. Notice I have the in-app notifications right here. I have my profile. And then over here in the open menu, I can do the same things. I can create a new request. I can view my calendar and events. Let's do that for a second. And let's say I have something planned for May the 2nd. That's where I have my note to set up Cross Connect, so I can see the things on my calendar right there. If I go to create a new request, it's the same experience we viewed earlier. I go to service catalog, next. Again, remember we set up dynamic routing here. So if I pick Cross Connect, notice those same new fields pop up. All very dynamic, all very branded to your customer or to your company. Okay, so that's your customer's experience using MCIM's Colo customer portal. Hannah and Jenny are going to show you more of how your team will respond to customer requests and how MCI makes this possible. But first, let's go back to Mark and Stuart to answer some of your questions.
Okay, thanks, Michael. And time for some Q&A. Let's see if we've got any questions.
Let's do it.
Looks like we do have a few. I'll go ahead and read the first one for you, Stuart.
All right.
Can the portal solution you showed contact both customers as well as internal operating staff and teams? In some cases, it may need to notify both, but in other cases, it may need to notify one or the other. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer is we can do both or one or the other. But it's a really fair question. As Michael showed, depending on what type of maintenance is going on, if it's an annual, you probably want to notify your customers and external people about that. If it's an internal work order back house, you want that to go to just your staff. So it's a great question. The answer is we can do both. That is something that we configure during implementation, so we get your communication protocols right. All right. I'll read this one for you, Mark.
Sure.
Let's go. We currently use 2 or 3 different softwares to accomplish this. So how do I get from 3 softwares down to 1? Does MCIM help with implementation and migrating all my data out of my older systems? And what about QA?
Yeah, I love this one. So it sure does.
Mm-hmm.
And we certainly are big proponents and advocates of streamlining your technology ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly also have a team of implementation specialists that'll help you through that process. And on the quality assurance side of things, a team to make sure that everything comes out A1.
That's right. And I like to think in 3 softwares to 1. That is right. But that's probably all the time we got for now. So let's get back into it. Quick point again, you can ask questions throughout the demo here. Just click on the word balloon in the bottom right-hand column of GoToWebinar and submit your questions. We will have one last session at the end, but let's get back into the demo and over to Hannah. Take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah, and for this portion of today's demo, I'm going to review how your users can find work efforts that are assigned to them and complete them in MCIM. Now you can see that I'm still on the portal screen where we have visibility to work requests that have been created. These requests correspond to a work order in MCIM that needs to be completed by one of my users in order for this request to be marked complete. So the first question is, how can my users find work efforts assigned to them? To answer that, I'm going to navigate over to MCIM's homepage. Now the home page is the landing place for all MCIM users logging in on the desktop, and it's a page that shows users relevant information to them. This is key when we look at two very useful widgets along the right-hand side of the page, the Work Order Manager and Change Request Summary. Work orders and change requests are the two different flavors of maintenance in MCIM. We'll begin with work orders, since the work requests we just looked at in the portal would create a corresponding OD, on-demand or ad hoc work order for my users to complete. And on this widget, we can see those on-demand work efforts that are currently assigned to me. Beneath that, we can see PM work orders assigned to me. PM stands for preventive maintenance, so these are work orders that are generally fulfilling a single maintenance requirement on a single asset and have been generated from a schedule. Now there is a specific work request on the portal page that I've pulled open that is ready to be completed, which is this cross connect. Now we can see that it's ready to be completed by its status, which is approved and pending implementation. This is one key difference between work orders and change requests. Work orders will generate in this status, whereas change requests will have to pass through an approval process with multiple levels of oversight before they are ready to be completed. Now we can see a lot of this information has pulled over from what was filled out in the portal. But I can still make changes to these fields. If I needed to adjust assignment or priority or dates, I would just want to edit this record. There are a few additional pieces of information I can fill out as I'm completing this work effort, such as part orders. Have I consumed any spare parts at my site while completing this work? Also, I can track my time through the use of time cards. Now, once I have completed this work order, the last step is to update the status to completed, which will automatically update the request in the portal as well. To do that, I'm going to come up here and click Edit. And if I scroll down, I'm just going to update that status to completed and click Save. That status has updated, and the portal work request will have updated as well. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, who will show you a few more attributes of the customer portal.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm a front-end software engineer here at Fulcrum, and I'm here in our virtual topology tab just to show some quick ways to interact with and manage it. So first, just want to highlight some symbols. These open circles here indicate the end of the dependency branch in the downstream direction. Whereas if we slide up here to the top, we can see that this main switchgear is not the end of its branch and has upstream dependencies. All right, so let's say looking at this, we realize we don't use generator 4 here and we want to remove the dependency between generator 4 and this main switchgear. We can right click on either and we'll get our right click context menu where we can select delete dependency. From here, we can just unlink it, and before we save, we'll want to check to make sure it's the right one. And here I've unlinked generator 1, so I can easily undo that and select the generator 4. And actually, let's delete a downstream dependency 2 and just check both of those before clicking delete. All right, so now we can see our changes, but let's just add those back because we actually do want both of those dependencies mapped. So here we can right click again and just search and or select the assets we want mapped. And for sites that do also wish to map their dependent areas, we can do that too. So let's just add a generator yard area as a downstream dependent to our fuel oil storage tank here. We're back in our right click menu. And there we go. And if a user isn't really interested in seeing the areas, they can easily hide them or show them as needed. And finally, if we need to see more details on any of the assets or areas mapped, we can click on their title and be brought to their individual record page. And here you'll notice that our visual starts again from the selected assets perspective, starting with its immediate upstreams and downstreams. All right, thank you so much for checking this out with me. Back to you, Mark and Stuart.
Well, thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you to everyone who made it this far. We really covered a lot today.
Yes, we did.
Let's check and see if we have any last minute questions. I know one popped through about halfway. And is everything available on mobile? Stuart, do you want to handle that one?
Sure, yeah. Pretty easy to answer. It's this one. Hannah did show some of it. Yes, we have a mobile platform. It's available in the App Store as well as on the Google Play Store. You download that, you log in with your regular credentials, and it is specifically built for the mobile deal. So good question, but yes, we do have mobile. And to your point, Mark, we do cover a lot. Everything from the front end, the customer colo side that Michael showed, to the back end parts that techs use, as well as the customer attribution model. That was a lot of stuff for one single webinar. We could go a lot deeper. So Mark, if people want to learn more about this, who do they need to call?
So they can call me directly. They can call my team, the sales team here at MCIM, or reach out by email at results@mcim24x7.com.
That easy. With that, we really appreciate everybody attending. Thank you, Michael, Hannah, and Jenny for presenting. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we will talk soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.